This meeting is called to order. We will begin with a moment for prayer or reflection. Thank you. Moving on to item 5, adoption of the agenda. I know that City Clerk Robinson has a couple of additions, and then I will throw it out to the group.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to add to item 12.1, new business, collective bargaining between the city and the Medicine Hat Firefighters Association. Add item 12.2, appointment of members to the Vicious Dog Appeal Committee, to new business as well.
Thank you, and those will go at 12.1 and 12.2 respectively. Are there any other additions to the agenda? Seeing none, we will adopt the agenda. Moving on to item 6, adoption of the minutes. This is the Medicine Hat regular City Council meeting, July 4th, 2022. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, the minutes are adopted. Now moving on to item 7.1, we have a presentation, Elder Abuse Case Management Program, and we have the Director of Administration and Finance and the Elder Abuse Case Manager with Medicine Hat Family Services, and Corey Fisher, Director with the Viner Center. Please feel free to introduce each of yourselves as well. Welcome. You have the floor.
So I guess I'm the first one up. It's great to be here. So my name is Lindsay Heyer, and I am the new Director of Administration and Finance at Medicine Hat Family Service. Just a little bit of also history, talking about the Elder Abuse Case Management Program. We've been working with the program for about a year and a half. It's been an amazing blessing. The program has did many things for the community. As such, the program has heightened the awareness of elderly abuse, educated clients on how to cope, assisted in managing legal aspects of abuse, and also finding real life solutions to painful situations. So Medicine Hat Family Service, though, has decided to transfer the program over to the Kirby Center and to the Viner Center because we just thought it was an excellent fit. And so we, as Medicine Hat Family Service, continue to work with the Viner Center very closely, providing counseling and lifelong learning every month. So just in closing, on behalf of Medicine Hat Family Service, just want to say thanks to the Council for their past and present support of the Elder Abuse Case Management Program, and also for supporting us as an agency so we can continue to provide counseling to the community. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Corey Fisher. I am the director at the Viner Center. We have been operating the Viner Center now since September of 2021. So we're coming up on our first year, and we're really excited to be bringing Jeanette and the Elder Abuse Case Management Program on board.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeanette DeVore, and I have a background in gerontology and community development. And I was invited to join the Elder Abuse Case Management Program, and we're here to showcase some of our success stories. Okay. So I thought we'd just zip through these first few slides. It's an overview about what elder abuse is, and I'll just read it out loud, if that's okay with everyone. Elder abuse is any action or inaction by a person in a trusting relationship that causes harm and distress to an older adult within the scope of emotional, financial, medication, physical, and sexual abuse or neglect. And the case management program operates under the umbrella of the acronym CARE. It stands for Case Management, Advocacy, Referral, and Education. And we connect seniors and families, friends, and neighbors with resources that can help them through difficult times. Excuse me. Seniors may experience domestic or family violence. However, elder abuse has a number of different components related to emotional and financial abuse without the domestic or family violence element necessarily bringing it with it. With our findings, we had 39 people that contacted us on their own and another 26 that came through community resources, community agencies. And so we were pleased that without a lot of advertising, people found us. So that was good. And then our age categories of the 65 people that we connected with, and that is just the year of 2021, January to December, we noticed a shift in the desire to report abuse. About 10 years ago, people, would say what was happening, but they didn't want to go forward and do anything. Now, some seniors willingly exposed the alleged perpetrators and sought legal action and/or counseling. And some type of action is desired because it's just not right. And just a few statistics on gender. 42 out of the 65 were women that were experiencing abuse. 23 were men, and all identified as either male or female. And then our findings, the breakdown of the types of abuse, emotional and financial abuse usually come together as the two items. We had 9 cases of physical, some neglect, 2 sexual abuse, and 1 medication. And how do we assist them? We problem solve with over 150 service providers in a variety of disciplines within the city and throughout the province. So we don't have to do it alone. We don't have to know all the answers, but we know some excellent resources throughout the community and the province of Alberta. We follow the guidelines here in Medicine Hat under advocacy, crime prevention and intervention, family matters, housing or lodging, income support, mental health, physical health, nutrition, recreation or socialization, and transportation. A little bit further on our findings, the categories of the alleged abusers were 31 adult children, either a niece or a nephew or the adult child, some landlords, other people that were just predatory, lurking around trying to take advantage, 7 care partners, 6 intimate partners, 2 neighbors, a sibling, a friend, and last year, no grandchildren. When we talked about landlords, we extended it to people who are offering room and board to seniors. And as Lindsay said earlier today, a landlord can also be a landmine. And so predatory friends or family take advantage of seniors. And so that's what we have, that extra classification for the landlords. Includes bona fide landlords as well as those offering room and board. Now we're into some things that we learned. That's where we're going to slow down a little bit. Things we learned is when adult children have never left home or return home with a partner and children, or they suffer from mental health concerns or addictions, or they have developed a false sense of entitlement and take control. Seniors are at risk of emotional and financial and physical abuse under these circumstances. Emotional and financial abuse are the most prominent and frequently occur within the intergenerational family involving adult children. Dynamics include the absence of privacy, harassment, bullying, or controlling behavior, verbal threats, reduced emotional and physical safety, as well as diminished trust. Then another side of emotional and financial abuse thrives with unhealthy relationships or living arrangements with friends or families. or friends with benefits, sorry. The family situation is one thing, and then friends or friends with benefits is a different kind of type of abuse. When friends move in together without an agreement on how expenses will be shared and consider, for example, considering dietary needs or other health needs, the trouble begins. For example, one senior was offered or invited to stay with her friend and her, like the couple, husband and wife, and the senior thought that they were going to split the expenses 3 ways. Well, she moved in and brought all her stuff over, and then they said, well, we're a couple, and so we're going to just go half and half. So she ended up paying way more than what she anticipated, but they had no agreement in place. They hadn't discussed that ahead of time. And so another example is a senior couple, they're dating, they move in together, and one of them is clearly not ready for a long-term relationship or a commitment, and it turns out to be a controlling situation. So it's difficult to get out of those kinds of things. Another thing we learned was emotional and financial abuse by care partners or predatory family and friends also occurs in care homes. And with that, seniors are unaware of someone's criminal past, their addictions or mental health concerns, and unknowingly welcome predators into their dwelling. And in some cases, it's because of misplaced trust or loneliness. They're just so eager to have some company. This is a big one. With personal directives and power of attorney issues, it presents many, many challenges. Oh boy. Some examples are the designated agent or power of attorney has a false sense of entitlement and their authority should be challenged. But it's a lot of work to do that. And the other one is if a designated agent or power of attorney is menaced by family despite completing their duties responsibly. And this occurs when there's a perception of favoritism among the siblings. Adult children continue to quarrel without resolution. So they just carry on like they did when they were kids. And then another case is when either or both seniors are in a second marriage, the stepchildren get aggressive, and gets very nasty, and it's all about the money. Seniors are unknowingly led to capacity assessments and fail because of duress, resulting in immediate loss. For example, they lose their driver's license, and a lot of other losses come with that. And the driver's license is revoked, and then they go through a grief process because of betrayal by family or friends. And then there's harassment about finances and housing, and it just continues on. Another issue is some older adults do not have access to cell phones and computers or transportation, creating the need for outreach services not necessarily related to elder abuse. So we have the elder abuse piece, and oftentimes there's other things that need to be applied for, grants, other assistance that they might need, but then there's those that have not reached out because of elder abuse. They just need some help. And so part of that is related to being in isolation. And so homebound seniors at risk of or experiencing homelessness, hunger, isolation, loneliness, compromised mental or physical well-being, or poverty can use help connecting with community supports to maintain their independence. Home visits for in-person assistance are needed because clicking on a website is not an option. They just don't have a computer, and oftentimes they don't have a cell phone either. And some seniors may not have the means to attend an agency appointment to get the paperwork done, and they either need a ride or a worker to run their papers back and forth, their documentation, so that they can get the benefits that they're applying for. And then the next piece is leaving an abusive dwelling to find safe and affordable accommodation is difficult enough. But if you have a pet, mobility challenges, or you like to have a smoke or a little drinky once in a while, it's really super difficult to find a place to move on short notice, and sometimes even if you give notice. And the other thing is the income asset tests for the fleeing abuse grant are so low that if you do qualify, by the time you make the move, any savings that you might have had are gone. So housing and lodging availability prospects are low and rent subsidies are scarce. Accommodations are too fancy to meet the needs of some seniors. For example, the hallways are too narrow, so they're bumping into the hallways, damaging the walls with their scooters, and damage deposits, smoking and pet fees, rent, utilities, setting up in a different place is expensive, and what little savings there were are quickly gone. And so we would be looking for, the perfect site would be affordable, it's pet-friendly, it's accessible and for persons with disabilities, and you can have a smoke or a beverage of your choosing. And then we're now into the things that we can work together on. And here we go, Corey, your turn.
So moving forward, as we move forward with taking this program over, there's definitely some things that we can work with our community partners to achieve when addressing elder abuse. One of the things we want to focus on is mobilizing province-wide education on some of the hot topics like addressing harassment, keeping your banking information private, investing in the June 15th World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, educating on personal directives, wills, and estate planning, reminding banking institutions to be on the lookout, knowing the risks of living with family friends or friends with benefits, and making sure that everyone is comfortable speaking up because something can be done. Once a senior sets up in their new home, thousands of dollars have been spent, even with donations and prudent shopping. Moving and related expenses can be a deterrent in the decision whether to stay or leave in an abusive situation, so finding additional funding for that. Case managers and outreach workers are hampered with 20-minute long wait times to find out how to access programs and services for our clientele, and right now we have Jeanette. Once a senior does find a new place to live, they need help packing up and then unpacking after the move. The journey is already emotional enough and physically exhausting, and they simply may not have the strength or capacity to unpack and get organized. Volunteers are needed with response training to make a positive difference. Sustainable funding for the elder abuse case management and outreach services would work tremendously towards helping seniors boost their quality of life and autonomy, as well through education, advocacy, and the referral services. Locally, to date, we've assisted with securing safer living conditions through landlord advocacy and finding new accommodations, ongoing emotional and educational support with referral services for intimate partner violence, providing a connection between police or victim services and attending court proceedings, raising awareness in rural communities by connecting with the FCSS in Redcliffe, the counties of Cypress and 40 Mile. A pre-trial conference where the judge ruled in a senior's favor to recover more than $20,000 taken by predatory family or friends was accomplished with Jeanette's hard work and attending court with a victim. We plan to shift from one-on-one intervention to prevention with lots of group information sessions in hopes of reducing criminal and civil court cases, as well as the time involved. Some of our most popular topics that we want to focus our attention on is communication and healthy relationships, dating as an older adult, personal directives, and how important it is to be careful, thinking of living together for families, friends, or friends with benefits, and the risks. There's lots of other resources that are available through the Alberta Elder Abuse Awareness Council. Thank you. I'm going to get that one soon. But we really would like to thank you very much for providing us with an opportunity. We're very, very excited to continue our partnership with Medicine Hat Family Services. We're really excited to have Jeanette on board and providing the services out of the Viner Center. And I'll be keeping her as busy as I possibly can. Thank you so much for having us tonight, inviting us, and we do invite you to help us to promote the programs we have.
Just wanted to add one more thing in closing. Chantel Ottenbright is currently the chair of the Elder Abuse Awareness Council, and she's also a city resource worker. And so she prepared a letter that's in your package, and we are hoping as a group that maybe we can come back in the new year and share our progress report and update you with what has happened in this year of 2022. And look forward to staying connected, and very much appreciate your time this evening to share our stories. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just before we get to any questions, if anyone wanted to get involved volunteering with your program, who would they contact and how would they contact them?
So anyone who did want to volunteer or give us a hand with the Elder Abuse Case Management Program could definitely contact Angela Dunn at the Viner Center, 403-529-8307. And she's our manager of volunteers. We'll go through the screening process and then we will find them. Work to be done.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Sharps?
Sorry. Thank you for the presentation. I actually just had a quick question. Do you know how we compare to other municipalities in your statistics?
Yes, Chantel knows, and we can send that information to you.
I would love that. Thank you.
Councillor Knodel?
Thanks, Mayor Clark, through the chair. Thanks for coming here tonight. It was a gift to see Jeanette in the agenda, for one. I'm very lucky to have taught her granddaughter, and she is a very special part of my world, so thank you for being here, Corey. I still tell anyone that I know who hasn't yet been to the Viner Center to go and explore, because it's a really special place, and the time I spent down there with you has been it's been a very important part of my journey on council. So thanks for the time that you've taken tonight. And Lindsay, thank you for coming. I don't know you personally. Your face is familiar, but thanks for being here. So the one thing that I notice about your presentation is you are prioritizing humanizing seniors. I think the older I get, the more I realize that sometimes seniors are, and even children, like you see that the spectrum of young to old, there's a kind of, people are sloughed off as they get older, and it's something that we need to focus on, and I'm glad that you're doing that. I think oftentimes in family systems, hurt people, and you're showing us that seniors are not exempt from that pain and suffering. So you cannot heal in isolation. There's all of my quotes in a row. Having a team of people to work with you makes recovery and healing from these things possible. So what you're doing is invaluable, and I'm so grateful to learn about it because I was unaware. And I'm looking forward to sharing this information as I have older, elderly people in my life that I care deeply about and want them to have resources if they need it. You're making help visible and accessible. I'm glad that Councillor Sharps asked the question. You asked the question about where to find, how to get help. I am hearing that your ask is promotion of your program and promotion of volunteers. So I, again, look forward to sharing that information. And yeah, I'm just really grateful to have a team of people that are in our community willing to do this work. And I hope over time, Jeanette, that you have a growing helping hand so that you're not alone in this, but it looks like you've got some people beside you who are on the journey with you. So thank you.
Councillor Dumanowski?
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, thank you to the presenters. I echo Councillor Knodel's comments around the relationship that we have and need to continue to have and bolster with elders in our community. And there's a very symbiotic relationship with the Viner Kirby House, obviously, Center. And I was curious more, and I saw the categories. I had questions, but you answered them as your presentation went on around categories and whatnot, and the types and percentages. Now, if I wrote down correctly, 55% are self-identified and 30-odd% are referred. Maybe if you could give some background around some of the complexities. I'm trying to imagine if somebody self-identifies, the complexities that go with that. That means they have some ability to access a cell phone or the capacity emotionally, physically, et cetera, to reach out, versus those who are referred. How do you deal with the ones maybe just very quickly, the ones that are referred, because in many cases, I would imagine it's anecdotal, at least initially it is, right? And you're having to discern and maybe speak to other relationships you have. Like I would imagine, do you ever involve the Minnesota Police Service when you're doing any of these? There is a criminal element to it,
Yes.
or there's access concerns. You go to a home that's been referred, but you can't gain access to that person. Can you speak to a little bit about that?
Okay, sure. With regard to the referrals, if it's coming from a community agency, they've usually connected with the person and said, is it okay if I share your story? Usually they'll say, here's the number, call, you know, the program. Many people call on their own. I've had a few where a neighbor would call in and I'm not really sure, like, should I phone them? I'm not sure, but I phoned them, and sure enough, they didn't even ask who called. They just said, yes, I need help. And that has evolved into a case of assault. And then from there, we're still working on that. But from there, we got, well, number one is safety. We do safety planning right off. That's the first thing we do. And make sure the person's in a safe place. And then from there, it just depends. So we work under the categories of some type of advocacy, crime prevention or intervention, family matters, housing, income support, mental health, nutrition, socialization, recreation, transportation. So we kind of do a full picture of what's happening and what we're best to go forward. And so just depending on what's happening, who the perpetrator is, what's happening, is it a civil case or is it a criminal case? And oftentimes it can be resolved without either going to court or involving the police, but we often do involve the police into the victim service unit. And does that kind of answer?
It does. You know, it's heartening to hear that there are people who are taking interest and creating a voice of advocacy for the elders. I think we've had presentations here from Women's Shelter, Phoenix Safe House. Many times they talk about the complexities and the case loads, and we kind of imagine this demographic, perhaps, or age demographic that fits a support service, but we probably, there are many who wouldn't imagine that elders would be in that position, right? They've made it that far, so to speak, if I can use that term, and they obviously have things in place. And so when you think about the vulnerabilities, I guess with all these groups, never mind the elders, it's a real thing. And so speaking about it, bringing attention to it, creating opportunities for people to reach out, and then creating a safe plan, which was kind of a follow-up, because I would imagine that the immediate challenge with a lot of these cases is you've made contact, now others know they've done that. How are they safe from the perpetrators that are, doing these things against them? So last question, and it kind of fits in with the SFIT, Safe Families Intervention team that the police service has, that Councillor McGrogan actually in his former life initiated, and that had to do, and my relationship to that in this case is there's follow-up, because in many cases they reach out and someone talks to them and says, talks them out of it, let's say,
Yes.
or uses other means to change their opinion around things. What avenue or what means have you guys used, or timelines as a follow-up to these cases, so that there is some follow-up that allows or prevents any further exacerbation of a bad situation to start?
We each one is kind of different depending on the circumstance, but we follow through after we've developed a care plan. We follow through along the way and see how things are going, and eventually we're able to close a file. Oftentimes it could be just a package of information that they need to look at to go forward, and just to be aware. And some of the perpetrators aren't even aware that they're doing something wrong, and so they get it and they say, gee, that's not good. And so it just depends. There's so many different, of 65 cases, they're all different. There's similarities, but the things that we're kind of targeting that have come to light so many times in the last year is the abuse of the power of attorney and the agent status, and or else having a family member challenge the person that's doing a really good job and creating all kinds of issues, you know, confusion and problems, like just, you know, where there shouldn't be anything. So that's what one of our goals is, to raise awareness about, know what you're doing when you, designate your power of attorney and agent, and be aware, and as an agent or a power of attorney, that, you know, what your powers are. Sometimes people don't even know that they have the authority to do something that they ask, and yes, you have, that's what you were designated for. Do it. That's what you can do to protect the money. And so there's lots of areas where education, and that's what we're going to try to focus through group sessions to get people more aware of what can be done and how about prevention. And with the housing piece, it's a difficult challenge. We're able to successfully move 3 people in a very short period of time because of availability. And one had a pet, and I thought, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? And it just appeared. And she loved the place. She had the money for the damage deposit. She was just over the threshold in her bank account to qualify for the fleeing abuse grant, but she was able to apply through special needs assistance for a new bed, a new TV, you know, things like that. So we get those things in place, and she's set up and she loves it. Her little dog loves it, and it's all good. And so, yes, so.
Well, once again, thank you. I appreciate, I'm not asking those questions because I'm nosy. I'm trying to bring real life attention to a real life issue that certainly I know you deal with. And Councillor Coulee, the older we get, you're correct.
And that is what Chantel has focused on her letter that's in your package, the one dated July 27th. She talks about senior-friendly communities. And there is a reference, Councillor Sharps, to Medicine Hat having the 3rd highest rate of disclosures throughout the province. I think there's 12 or 16 of us case managers throughout. There's Grand Prairie, Edmonton, and the north, all throughout Alberta. So we're the 3rd highest in disclosures and response. And we have so many good resources, and continue to work on the good resources to meet the needs. So we identify the issue about moving in with friends and friends with benefits, so developing a resource for that. There is one already, it's fairly new, called dating in older relationships, something like that. It's online, it's really good. People can, if they can print it off. If somebody doesn't have a computer, I print it off and make up a nice package for them to review before they get into something that might be over their head in future, just some things to think about. There's some really good resources on a document that's online. I have to say online all the time. We do have printed copies of this one here. It's called Staying Safe, a resource for older adults living in Alberta. Click on that, and it's a page that you can just flip through. It makes a noise like the page is turning. And that's through the Alberta Elder Abuse Awareness Council. Really good stuff in here. And so, so there's always new things coming out in terms of resources for people to access, and it's based on community need, what we identify in communities, what are some of our challenges, and then the Alberta Elder Abuse Awareness Council tries to develop something that can respond to those needs. So we're working all together for the same end result.
Thank you. And seeing no further questions, I want to thank you again for your presentation and for your valuable contributions to our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us. We appreciate your hospitality. And thank you, Rondi.
With that, can I get a motion to receive the presentation for information?
I move to receive the presentation for information.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Councillor Robbins seconded. And we will vote. And that's unanimous. Moving on to reports, item 8.1, Energy and Infrastructure Committee meeting, July 7th, 2022.
I'll motion to accept.
I'll second that.
Are there any questions or comments on the report? Councillor Sharps?
I had a question on number 9, the Carey Drive pathway. I think that's the picture I saw, and I wasn't clear on the picture about how that was looking and how that's being fixed. Because if I recall, the picture is like sidewalk, asphalt, sidewalk. Is that the one? I think it is. Yeah, okay.
I believe that Acting Managing Director Pat Bohan will respond.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just with regard to to that area, we're still considering how exactly we're going to treat that particular area. One option is exceedingly expensive, so we're trying to find the best way to address the storage of snow in the winter while still protecting and making accessible the pathway itself. We never intended for there to be 2 sidewalks or 2 pathways. Really, we want the folks to be using the main multi-use pathway. So still examining options for how we might tackle the 2 spaces.
Councillor Knodel?
Thanks. Through the chair, just a follow-up question. Do we have any feedback from the public about whether they think it's problematic or not? I know that we've given a bit of our feedback about that spot. Personally, I think that it's fine to use asphalt. It doesn't concern me when the path is visible to the right or the left, depending on what side of what direction you're headed. But yeah, do we know any, do we have any comments from the public that you've received about that particular sidewalk, or are you going based on just your own experience there?
Yep.
Your Worship, the feedback we've received was just a notification that some of the sidewalks were being damaged by some buckling from heat conditions, that we get this type of thing happening quite often. So that's really what prompted it was how we were going to tackle the buckling of the existing sidewalk. So how we remediate that is really the question under consideration for the department at the moment.
Councillor Sharps?
Sorry, I just had one more comment on the water fill stations. I can't tell you enough how much I love those things. So I saw people downtown using them the other day, but there's one near where I walk my dogs. It is absolutely brilliant. I never have to pack a bottle. I can stop, or I never have to pack my full, and I can stop, get the little monsters their water. It's great. So I see people using it all over Southridge. It's just, yeah, thank you. It's awesome.
Agreed. Yeah, great work on that. Seeing no further questions or comments, we will vote on the motion to receive the report for information. And that's unanimous. Moving on then to item 8.2, Public Services Committee meeting July 11th, 2022. And all items there are for information.
I so move. And I'll second.
Councillor Knodel?
Through the chair, thanks, Mayor Clark. So my thoughts are related to the information that's coming out about dog leash zones and areas that people can walk their dogs or have their dogs off leash, on leash, off leash zones, and the information that's come from the public. So I was wondering, so I know many people, myself included, that have reactive animals. We've got animals that aren't super friendly with other animals. And I was wondering if there was the possibility, I know the number right now that we heard in public services about where off-leash parks would be or how many there would be is about 4. However, I was wondering if there was ever a possibility that we could, as a community, create a reactive dog water access zone that could be booked for short intervals of time, like a fenced off area. I feel like there's quite a large community that would access that, especially those who are unable to socialize their animals and would still like access to water.
City Manager Feltham, can we address this to Managing Director Mestel?
Absolutely.
Through the chair, I'll maybe just start to make sure I understand the question. Are you inquiring whether it would be possible to create a space for certain animals to have access to water amenities? Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, clarifying detail would be a space that would be independently booked by an owner, maybe for a 20 to 30-minute interval, that they would not encounter another animal but could still swim. So it'd be an innovative thinking kind of solution, I would say.
Okay, through the chair, thanks for the clarification. I'm sure anything is possible. Certainly dedication of space makes it more complex, and usually that means more costly. There are private business opportunities that provide spaces with amenities for dogs and animals, so the private sector, if there's a business case, may pick up on that. Certainly if this was an area of priority for council for exploration in terms of a business analysis, we could put one together, but currently today I don't believe that that's an area of examination, but an interesting idea.
Councillor Sharps?
So just two things. I had a question, shocking. I have a lot of questions. We shouldn't be shut down for 2 weeks because I have lots of questions today. But I think what Councillor Knodel is referring to, or maybe I don't know if you've ever used the canine compound. Yeah, I love that as well. And that's just when I have dog parties. I know, weird. Anyways, my second question is on the Community Vibrancy Advisory. And I may have missed this, and I apologize. I know they got a lot done on the last information session from 2 council meetings ago, but it was specifically to the Truth and Reconciliation. My question was, and maybe it needs to go back to committee, so if I've got this wrong, just bear with me, but I'm looking for some information about bringing a land acknowledgement to council prior to starting our council meetings. I feel like personally, I would really like to see that. I'd like to see some conversation on that. I feel like we are the only municipality where I've reached out to and looked at, and we're the only one that doesn't. And I'm not saying that we have to follow the leader, because that's not really what I do anyways, but I really strongly feel just very attached to this land acknowledgement, and that I think that I'd like to see if we can have some further conversation.
I'm going to refer that to the chair of the Public Services Committee, and of course you can refer it on to Managing Director Mestel if you like. Councillor Robbins?
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, and I know Managing Director Mestel has more information about this, but we did, at our last council meeting, if I'm not mistaken, adopt the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and those are now back in city staff's hands to pull forward some of the recommendations. One of the recommendations, as I recall, that they made was about the land acknowledgement itself. So the Truth and Reconciliation Committee recommended a number of things, and that was one of them. In terms of what's contained in it and all of the details, that was contained in the report that we passed last time.
Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Sharps?
I do. So I don't know. I agree 100%. I know we approved it, but I think that's a chair decision. I guess I'm asking the mayor if you're the chair of council, if that's a meeting, or is that a decision you can bring, like I do the land acknowledgement on council employee committee, because I feel that strongly about it. And I'm the chair, I felt that was my right to do, so I guess I'm putting this back on you.
Yeah, so I think we were waiting for the full recommendations of the content of the Truth and Reconciliation, or the land acknowledgement from the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. I'm not sure what the timeline is on that. But that was the purpose of, one of the purposes of striking that committee was to get the recommendations on a number of things with respect to truth and reconciliation, including a land acknowledgement. I believe it was just to have one at this point, but I'll once again refer back to the chair.
Sure, I was asked to be a member of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, so I was there for all of our discussions, as was various city staff as well. They know that there is a land acknowledgement, that there is a policy that these things exist. We had some discussion, which was really interesting, of who agrees what the acknowledgement is. The acknowledgement should mean something to the person saying it. We want to make sure that it's connected to our community, and the sort of difficulty we're having in a certain extent is who assesses that for our Indigenous community. A lot of the leaders in our Indigenous community are not from Medicine Hat. So they come from different places and they come to work here and provide us their wisdom, and it was really meaningful to hear all of that. But the focus should be on people who lived on this treaty territory and what they think an acknowledgement would mean. And so that didn't cause a difficulty with the committee. It was just an observation that was made that it should be connected to the people who lived here. And so a lot of the people from our Indigenous community who were on the Truth and Reconciliation Recommendations Committee weren't from here. And so they didn't want to comment on an acknowledgement that belonged to other people, which I thought was a respectful way of talking about it. But it's, there was no land acknowledgement discussed. It's on the recommendations of something that they felt that was important. But we have a land acknowledgement. There's the issue to me, Councillor Sharps, is the policy around it is restrictive. The land acknowledgement itself also leaves some freedom, and again, Managing Director Mestel can stop me at any minute now, but has some freedom in it to add to it. Often, if you're at the Esplanade, there might be more that's added to it. It doesn't have to be limited to such a narrow a thing. At one of our meetings, I was asked to do the land acknowledgement. I was privileged to do so, and I sort of extended it with my own thoughts about connections to the river and as a place of gathering as we were here. So I sort of added some pieces while keeping the essence of what was important to say, and then adding things that I felt about why I would make the acknowledgement personally. But it's the policy that's quite restrictive. The city, the land acknowledgement can be expanded to the feelings of the person uttering it, but when it can be uttered is restricted by policy.
And was the policy reviewed by the Truth and Reconciliation Committee with recommendations?
Not the policy itself. We just did discuss the fact that the policy was restrictive a few times, yes.
Okay, so at this time, there is no work being done on the policy. I guess I was confused about that too. I thought we're going to get back a revision to the policy as part of the work on Truth and Reconciliation. Managing Director Mestel, do you have any comments?
Your Worship, Councillor Robbins has covered most of the ground very well and had the insight from the discussions with the Truth and Reconciliation Recommendations Committee. Just, I guess maybe more broadly, that group was asked by Council to look at all the calls to action. And the recommendations that came back were quite comprehensive, and I think areas that they saw as maybe most impactful areas of focus. I can certainly follow up in terms of more guidance around the land acknowledgement itself and where they saw that potentially being in terms of priority, or if there's greater interest to embark on that work. Certainly, my understanding was we were waiting for the broader view at the calls to action and some feedback from that group that had a full selection of people contributing to it. And it wasn't necessarily a desire from Council to tell them what the priority looked like or what the recommendations that would be enacted before they had an opportunity to review that. So that's my recollection of the background, how we got here, and there certainly was a list of recommendations that came to Council at the first meeting in July that is now, it's a number of those that you've asked management to look at. What would it take to incorporate those recommendations and bring a report back to council. So we're working on that at the moment.
Yes.
Thank you, through the chair. I will say that the first meeting I attended, I did say that council had an interest in looking at the land acknowledgement. The Truth and Reconciliation Committee, as Managing Director Mestel pointed out, was asked to look at all of the calls to action. And so they methodically went through each of them, lots of discussion, lots of hearing the truth, which is challenging work to be sure. And they certainly, I mean, I was more of an observer, tried to be a participant, but my ability to process all of that is limited, I think. But we did, the first meeting I attended, that is something that we brought up as important to council to review, and city staff were there as well to hear that. And now that the recommendations have come forward, I know that we'll be hearing more about it at the committee and then up through council.
So is the policy being reviewed? Not at this time, or?
Your worship, no, we are not making proposed revisions to that policy at this point in time.
Councillor Knodel?
Through the chair, thanks. Two things. Can I make a suggestion that we direct staff to look at making the policy more flexible so that any action that we are recommended to enact on behalf of the commission or the group, it's possible? That's the first thing. And then the second, yep, go ahead.
Can I get some clarification? And you can do more than make a suggestion. You could make a motion if you like.
Sure. I'm not overly familiar with the policy at the moment, so I don't want to be super prescriptive and not hit the nail on the head. So I think as a general suggestion, and perhaps with some feedback from probably Councillor Robbins, I would be happy to make a motion. Can we come back to that in a second? So I'll say the second thing. My question is with owning the understanding that I do not represent an FNMI population, but aware of the fact that these 94 calls to action were created for the average human of any demographic to, live up to. That little book of calls to action was created so that we could, as the average person not part of these communities, could, honor what they've asked. I just wonder if we're creating unnecessary barriers in enacting on them by, it's not, I don't see it as such a hard thing to implement. I don't really understand why it's such a lengthy process. It's confusing to me, and I don't understand it.
Councillor Sharps?
And I'm going to align right there with Councillor Knodel. So if you recall, I think it was the day we were sworn in, I had this on the agenda about, I think we both did actually. So, and I know the advice at the time was to kick this back to committee that was going back to Vibrancy, and I was excited about that, and I got to meet the Vibrancy committee, and they're amazing, and they've done great work. And their one point on recognition and awareness, the very first point is review the city's statement of acknowledgement, recognition and respect in consultation with Indigenous members of the community. Update content and protocols determined by consultation process. So if we go from November 1 to now, I feel like sometimes we get caught up in some analysis paralysis. And I know that we, as an organization, we have to be careful and diligent, but there is a call to action. This is already documented. I just feel like we could move this a little bit faster. And I know I sound frustrated, and that's because I am frustrated. So if I sounded, it's correct.
Councillor Dumanowski?
Good dialogue, Your Worship. I think what we have to avoid, I was going to end on that, is trying to politicize an issue that I think we all agree to and on. And I'm not saying that others are politicizing it, but it can become a very polarizing discussion item in our public. What I would echo, I guess, a number of people's comments, and I think speaks probably for all of us, is that we have a number of recommendations that we're asking staff to look, evaluate, and bring back in some form of action. But there is some truth to that. I mean, if we waited for a thorough response from the standpoint of timelines, cost associations, et cetera, we may not move any of these forward. A land acknowledgement is an easy one. It's an easy win for all of us in the sense that it's meaningful and we all have a desire to do it. I do know, and I appreciate the comments you made around getting elders involved in the wording of it. It's curious to me because I know in a lot of different circles, including my day job, we have acknowledgements, and I'm be honest, I'm not entirely sure how they were derived, but I do know they speak to the treaty and treaties and the relationships in words that are appropriate for children in this case, and a faith context, being that I work for the Catholic District. But I know other groups have variations of it, and it speaks to the treaties as the main point of it. So for me, I think what we don't want to err is just hurriedly develop one or put one out there and then be criticized for not having left something out that's critical or not said it the right way. But I think the lesser or the bigger issue for me, depending on how you look at it, is not doing anything. And I think we're all saying that. And I guess to allow the public who are viewing this and the media who are covering it to understand is that we all want this. And so in our desire to earnestly get this out there and do it correctly, we're stepping on our own toes. So let's as an action item, ask our staff to appropriately come forward with that one, and I think council will be more than happy to endorse it and bring it to the table.
Councillor Robbins?
Yeah, I just wanted, oh, sorry, my turn, yes, through the chair. That this isn't a delay of staff in any way. The first meeting of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, this was discussed. They discussed it at length over time, including their recommendations. It's not like it's sitting with staff and staff just doesn't care about it. We've only just last time we were here approved that. I do agree that the acknowledgement is something, because it's policy related, we could certainly address before the rest, which may have some financial consequences to them. So that's going to take a while. We need to make sure that staff has the opportunity to do that. But I'm not sure if you made a motion, Councillor Dumanowski, but I would be happy to make a motion to direct staff to review both the land acknowledgement and the policy associated with it.
City Manager?
I was just going to say we would endeavor to bring back a recommendation on land acknowledgement to our next meeting.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions on item 8.2, we will vote on the motion to accept for information. And that's unanimous. Moving on then to item 8.3, Administrative Committee meeting of July 13th, 2022. And that's an item for adoption and information.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any Councillor Van Dyke.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, I had a question around definitions and who defines the terms used in the incentive policy. They are very specific because a lot of them hold a lot of weight in what they're describing. And I'm just wondering how the definitions for them are determined.
So, sorry, Mayor Clark, if I could turn this This is a long meeting. No, it's actually not. If I could turn things over to Rochelle to talk a little bit about process.
Certainly, Managing Director Pancoast, over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Van Dyke through the chair, ultimately, this was a process that involved both our legal team to help with specific wording and the business unit to help with business intent in terms of what we're trying to achieve in alignment with the bylaw that has already been passed. So it was a bit of a meeting of the minds, but if there's a specific concern, we can certainly take that away to look at it.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, just no specific concerns, just I was struck by the specificity of the language as I went through it, and so just wanted clarification on that. Thank you.
Would you mind, and totally fine if you don't, do you have like a specific instance of what you're talking about, just the definitions you were looking at being very specific?
It was more around things like conflict of interest and who is responsible for what and declarations and things like that. I just didn't know who determines the definitions on this kind of documentation. I assumed it had gone through some kind of a legal process, but I wasn't certain. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Knodel.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. Through the chair, this was inspired by Councillor Van Dyke's question. I found, now we read these agendas often, and I do occasionally struggle with the language inside of bylaws and other documents that have more legal influence. So I was curious, is the specificity or the level of language required in order to cover our legal bases? Or is it possible that in time we could have a more accessible level of readability of these documents just for simplicity and for accessibility's sake?
And before you comment on that, I will say that, fair point, plain language is better language, generally speaking. This would not, I don't think this would be the particular document that a resident would go to identify what incentives are available, how to apply for them. So there are other documents that are sort of in support of this document that would be more directed at public consumption, but I will, Managing Director Pancoast, if you have anything else to add to that.
Mayor Clark, I believe you've covered it well. We can always, across the organization, endeavor for plainer language, but yes, this would be more of our internal documentation with reference to website and support from direct incentive support staff to help walk people through a process if needed.
I guess it's more a question of principle or necessity in the creation of these legal documents, because I didn't study law. I don't know the answer to the question of, is it specifically to cover our bases, and is the specificity a requirement, or is it just to communicate exactly what we're saying in the least amount of words? And is it something beyond those two things? Maybe somebody else around the table can answer, because there's a couple lawyers here.
Okay, so sometimes it can be because that's how you say things in the least amount of words. Sometimes it is specificity, and sometimes it's getting consensus and everyone being able to agree on the wording. And sometimes it's just expedience. But I think I take your point that, plain language, and there is kind of a drive to go in a more plain language direction. It can be difficult with documents like this, but it's always worth a second look. Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, and through the chair. So Managing Director Pancoast, I'm on page 5 of 6 of the policy at the last paragraph. And so I have some questions about it, so I'm just going to read it. And sometimes it's repetitive, and I understand why that is necessary, but, so if an incentive staff member does not possess the requisite ability, knowledge, or skill to carry out a responsibility pursuant to this policy or procedures, then the incentive staff, acting coordinated with their manager, and those are defined terms earlier, right, must refer the matter to one or more persons with such requisite ability, knowledge, blah, 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 provided the persons to whom such matter is referred shall have the express duty at all times to faithfully uphold and observe the attestation requirement and the conflict reporting requirement in the respect of each matter. So my question is, the persons, so they must refer it to one or more persons. Is one or more persons in this policy anticipated being another member of city staff or somebody outside of city staff? Or is the answer it depends, because that's a really good legal answer.
I guess I would suggest it does depend, but it was not intended, I don't think it's intended to be specifically to city staff. Managing Director Pankos, you can comment, or I also noticed that we have City Solicitor Ben Bullock on the line too, who may want to weigh in. Do you have a preference?
I suspect City Solicitor Bullock would be well-equipped.
Are you there, Ben?
Good evening. I am here. Good evening. I haven't had time to reflect on that question very long, but I suspect that is a reference to internal staff, not someone external to the city. But if that's something you'd like us to take back and take a closer look at, we could certainly do that and report back to you at a later date.
Okay, you can. I'm just, it's totally fair, you haven't read the policy, but in this case, person, the definition of person is more broad than that. Councillor Robbins, do you have a follow-up?
Well, I did, just because if the person with the requisite ability, knowledge, and skill is someone, let's say, that's contracted, from the city contracts that person. It was the next part of the paragraph that kind of I got a little bit stuck on, is the person shall have the express duty at all times to faithfully uphold and observe. So I want to know who the person is and how do they get informed they have this duty. So if it's a member of city staff who's assigned to do this and fits within the definition, then I have some confidence that they would know they have an express duty to do this. But if it's somebody from outside of the city, because they are the ones with the requisite ability, knowledge, and skill, how do they know they have an express duty? Is that then built into a contract that they would have? Does it refer back to this policy?
I believe that in accordance with this policy, that's the role of administrative committee on page 4 and 5. City Solicitor Bullock, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, that could be correct. It's not the kind of question I think I could just answer on the fly in this meeting. I think if you want a succinct answer to that, I'd ask you just to leave the question with me, and I can provide a written response to you at a later time.
Are you, so that would mean that we would be deferring this item until next council meeting. Councillor Dumanowski?
Somebody already pointed out there are two lawyers around the table, but I was going to say that when it comes to the language, and trying not to say too much in jest about a very serious piece of policy here, I would imagine, I mean, maybe what I understood as the first question, or at least at the start of the conversation, was kind of what was the genesis of the changes or this additional language, specificity, et cetera. To me, I would imagine it is born out of concerns, loopholes, challenges, or perceived or real opportunities that against the city, or we want to strengthen and create a more robust language around a specific piece that kind of was born out of the amendments today. We're often seeing these types of improvements, I'll call them, because the incentive policy is not that old, if you will, and we're identifying probably and learning and growing as we go, or we're encountering questions or requests or perceived or real, and as we kind of put them through the sieve of the policy, we identify hiccups, I'll use them, or loopholes or problems. So it's the biggest question would be, are we making it so restrictive that it no longer fits any bill of sale, so to speak, that it no longer has the ability to action as an incentive policy? And I think what we're seeing here are improvements. So I would say if anything, they've probably made it more clear, certainly, and improved it. And my comment about the lawyer talk was around the simplistic language. I mean, there is a particular language or vernacular that is often used in bylaws, and you're right, we want to, and we've, as a council, and it's been a theme, let's make things more community-facing, more very straightforward. I think there are always going to be language pieces or vernacular that will have to be maintained. But if we can make those improvements, that's great. I'll part with, again, my other comment about adding some things to make the bylaw more comprehensive. When I was chair of audit many years ago, KPMG at the time, they were the auditors that we worked with. I think they still are. I recall many conversations, and this was accounting talk, but they were talking about internal controls, which I think a lot of people can understand. And internal controls is I've used this word too many times today, is at the genesis of a lot of these things, because it's where you identify or problems, or you've encountered problems, so you have to change the process or the language to close that gap. So this closes gaps. It removes bias. It enhances opportunities, and in the end, that's really what we want to achieve from an incentive policy. The interesting point I noticed, though, was the addition of the words "where applicable." Interestingly enough, I would have thought that would be language that would be loosey-goosey, there's my language, that would be pulled out of policy, but it obviously plays some kind of a role in the language support that's before us today. So I support it.
Councillor McGrogan.
Thank you. I just wanted to weigh in as a non-lawyer, but I think Robert just did, or Councillor Duvenos, he just did a great job of that. I just want to say, when I reviewed this, it really gave me a sense that staff, when they're developing this policy, are really concerned about code of conduct and conflict of interest, and they're just trying to close those loopholes. And I didn't concern myself with the legalities of the language too much, but I really got a sense that they're saying, okay, we've experienced things and we need to tighten it up. And that's the sense that I got. So I also support this. I think it's really good governance in my mind to look at policy on a continual basis and shore up weaknesses that we see through our experiences. So thank you.
Councillor Sharps.
Thank you, through the chair. So I do like this policy, but I did have some questions. So there was two parts. Number one, role of council, where it says council must receive, review, and at its sole discretion adopt this policy and approve any incentive recommendations. But I didn't see that tie back to any conflict of interest, and I don't know if it does need to. I was bored a couple weeks ago and I read Calgary's, and they actually have to sign a conflict of interest that they can't apply. And I noticed there's nothing on here that doesn't stop me from applying. And really, there should be, because even though I'm not, according to this, I'm not a manager or anything else, and I agree, I still have a level of influence. So I just think it's something we may want to look at, because nothing right here impedes me from applying. And I think there should be something that impedes me from applying if I'm going to sit on this council. But that's just my thoughts. I think that's a conflict, and I think if that went out into the community, if we published a list of all the incentives and it says HR Solutions or Sharp Immigration, I think the community would be outraged, and I think they should be outraged, because I do have a level of influence sitting around this table. So those are just my thoughts there. And then my second question is do all incentive applications go to, and I'm sorry if this is a dumb question, I just don't actually know the answer. Do these applications go to administrative committee? Are these looked at by the top level of the city, or is it ad hoc, or I'll just be quiet?
So to your first question, our conflict of interest requirements are laid out in the Municipal Government Act. So we are still required to adhere to those, and it would not be permitted for anyone on council to weigh in on a decision if they had one of those conflict of interests. But I think you're saying adding it into the policy for consideration. And on the second part, Managing Director Pankos, do you want to take a crack at that?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Sharps. It's really admin committee that has the authorities. However, they are able to delegate and in practice do delegate to the appropriate incentive staff who go through the details of the process. But it is the oversight of the administrative committee to make sure that that is being handled appropriately. And of course, there are specifics in here in terms of going through with reports to council, reports into audit committee, et cetera, for appropriate governance.
Councillor Van Dyke.
Thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to add that my initial comment that kind of set everything off was not in any way criticism. I was actually extremely thankful for the thoroughness of the language in this policy document and was struck by how thorough it was. So thank you for everyone who had input into this.
Thanks. Seeing no further questions or comments, we will vote on receipt for adoption and information. And that's unanimous. Moving on to item 8.4, Energy and Infrastructure Committee meeting dated July 21st, 2022. And there are 2 items for information and 1 for adoption.
I'll motion to accept.
Second.
Councillor Knodel?
Thanks, Mayor Clark. So I am just going to make sure I'm not talking about something that is not the right point first. Yes, this is power and water. This is not technology yet, is it? Dang it. It is? Okay, good. Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure I'm not hitting the wrong one. So I'm definitely, so through the chair, I'm a huge proponent of good technology. I think that just learning that a lot of this, a lot of the switches are like dating back to the first time they were, the installation is the word I'm looking for, dating back to installation. I think huge time can be wasted when tech isn't efficient, and I think that this upgrade, and I'm gonna go like all the way, I think this entire upgrade is huge, and I think as soon as we start, as soon as these things start failing, it's going to slow, it'll have a ripple effect. I think it's going to waste human labor time. There's so many things about this, and I'm a bit of a technology nerd, so I'm a bit aligned with the need of this. So as I was reading through this, I noticed that in the past we have relied on tech that comes from Dell, and I also noticed that some of the newer switches are from Cisco. Am I looking at the right person here? Okay, just maybe. I just wondered, how has, I know in the past, the quality of Dell wasn't great. How has that evolved? I know Cisco and Dell kind of speak, like they're different systems overall. I think they work together, but yeah, how do we, so are we going with a different brand than we were? And then how do we see the improvement affecting speed or consistency in work? How might this translate into a benefit for our residents, which is truly the end game, the end goal of all of these upgrades?
Acting Managing Director Bohan?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm a bit of a disadvantage coming into this meeting today, just coming back from a couple of weeks of vacation, so I don't have a ton of the detail on this specific instance, but I can draw on about 11 years experience with Microsoft in dealing with large enterprise organizations, and I'll echo some of your comments about the imperative of keeping your technology current. one of the things that is pretty apparent is that we really sweat the assets here at the city. So we've basically run this asset to end of life. In terms of the hardware, you've mentioned a couple of hardware organizations that we employ for our switching, our communications internally, and also the server technology. The layer that's probably the most critical layer is that software component that allows the systems to operate at greater efficiency. To answer your question specifically about what value this brings, we're at a critical point, and so replacing this infrastructure is imperative at this point. It had been, we'd hoped to get a couple more years out of it, but we've had to advance that for servicing capabilities. What we do hope to bring to the community is much more secure energy production and distribution. So we will gain that is more comfort that we can continue to deliver those services.
Just a follow-up question. So, and I know the answer to this, but I think it's good to put it out into the air. Cyber attacks, cybersecurity today is a huge risk, being that our energy production is something that we as a community kind of hold dear to us because it's essential in our survival, really, in our community. Do you see that these upgrades will translate to more of a guarantee that they'll be protected? That's, hold that in your brain. And then, yeah, answer that, and then it's a funding question. I'll ask that afterwards. Maybe somebody else can answer that.
Your Worship, if I may, the short answer is yes.
Okay. Amazing. That's great. Now everyone knows. That's why I'm asking. And then, being that this technology supports our energy production, are we able to use any funds from energy production to support the technology? Because I think it's such a symbiotic. I know that this is kind of like more of a philosophical, financial question, but being that they're so interconnected, is that how that works, or would we be taking that from a different budget line?
Your Worship, I actually don't know the answer to that question here today, but we can certainly tackle that and bring that information back to you.
Managing Director Egert, do you want to weigh in on that one? So the response was that the funds are being allocated from working capital, which is already in the existing electric budget. Okay. Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, and through the chair, this might be a question for our Managing Director Egert as well. My question was, so this funding was planned for 2024, but required prioritization, which I understand. And I should apologize, I didn't attend this meeting to Madam Chair of the committee. I tried to, and I tried to listen to them, but this one just didn't work out for me. So maybe the question was already answered, and I apologize if I'm rehashing something. But this was in the 2024 budget. It was prioritized now, which makes total sense to me. And the amount, $425,000 for 2022. Is that what was planned for 2024, or was the amount more or less?
Managing Director Egert, if you want, you can take that one away too. Do you want to come up to the podium?
Okay. There's two parts to this project. The first one is what we're dealing with today is the server upgrade. The other part of it, which will be now part of the 2023 budget, is related to a network system upgrade, which includes various other components listed in the material. And that's approximately just over $900,000. So that'll come later before council for approval. The move forward, I don't have that information at the top of my tip of my tongue right now, but your question was whether we moved it from 2024 to 2022?
Yeah, I just wanted to know with what we did move to 2022, was it what was budgeted for in 2024, or something more or something less? And if you don't know, you can get,
I don't know.
I'm just mostly curious. I see that it's necessary, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it, but I guess I'm sort of saying I would like to know more about it when we get an opportunity to. Maybe when we're talking about network is when that could come up.
Just perhaps to clarify, all right, is the question, is the amount budgeted for 2024 still expected to appear in the 2024 budget?
Not quite, but that's also a very good question. My question was, is this amount that we pulled forward from 2024 the amount that's budgeted in 2024? Is it more or is it less? And then if there's going to be more, I'm sure we'll hear about that as well.
Councilor Dumanowski?
Your Worship, I was going to speak to something else, but I recall from the committee meeting, the acting manager speaking to this being brought forward, the budgeted amount being brought forward, but I guess that came with the implication that it was the same amount, but you're right, it could be different. The bigger conversation was that there's a need to do it sooner than waiting, and that should have been identified. It was a gap that was identified, and wasn't, they didn't try to sneak around that. It was clear and forthright in the committee meeting that it was something that should have been, it was off their radar momentarily. And so good on them to say, no, we have a need to do this earlier. We made a mistake from the standpoint of timelines. We're going to pull it forward. So I was left with certainly with the idea that it was being pulled forward, and that was simply it. But the other piece that was spoken to, I didn't know about. Just quickly to the, as it's listed here, item .1 under 2, the tornado event. I know there's been lots of conversation about it and lots of community accolades, I know on behalf of yourself, your worship, and others. I did say at the committee meeting I was going to bring up 3 things, so I'll do that quickly. One was obviously my acknowledgement to the support services that we received immediately from City of Lethbridge, Nixon, and Fortis. I mean, you kind of live and work in a community with the idea that if in need, your neighbors are going to come to a rally and come to your need. And they did that very quickly, as I understand it. We talked about reciprocating agreements. There aren't any formal ones, but it's kind of just an accepted practice. But I do want to acknowledge that. I think it's important to do that, and I know it's been done, and so I'll just add my last point to that today. It does say in the director's notes here that there will be a incident debrief as time goes on in the coming weeks. I know one of the questions or concerns I brought up was full costs associated with this event. I mean, we had to get it back to normal, if you want to call it, as quickly as possible. But there's a cost, and we know it'll be in the millions. So the question is, it led to me asking, and I'm not being critical, but why we did not declare a local state of emergency that night. Part of me says that because sadly I've been party to a number of those over the years, and in many cases for lesser severity or perceived severity of events. And so not because I'm saying we didn't get it right, and I know our staff responded incredibly and very, quickly and with great resilience, because we're good at what we do. I think someone said that, and that's not to suggest that that it was overlooked, but I'm curious because I know in the past, and I made the comment that the first day of the last term that we were in council, we weren't even sworn in yet, we had to make a declaration. Many people remember that night, lots of wind and random fires occurring across the city, and it was quite chaotic, quite frankly. High winds and fire and other things. Some poles went down. I noticed and viewed many of them myself. But we did do that as a causation of what could be a bigger event or an event that would continue forward or would have greater implications or ramifications. So by declaring a local state, we had the access of that comes with that and the ability to do what we need to do. It sounds like we weren't impaired by not declaring a local state, but I am curious. That kind of brought into the conversation my desire as a representative of the public to at an appropriate time ask for a public summary, if you will, of the events that kind of maybe what a post-mortem will naturally occur. The departments will look at this, but kind of in a broader sense, what did we do really well? Where did we identify gaps, and what would we do differently in the event that something this happened again? We don't want it to, but it could. One of the pieces that we talked about there was having redundancy for access of power to our major industrial group, which is completely, the average resident would argue, perhaps look at me first, and that did occur. We did look at the residents and toward the residents first, but I would imagine our major industrial group will be asking questions around our need or our desire or our function for redundancy as we move forward. So a number of things, not to, again, kind of pick away at the things we didn't do well. These are real quick action, real-time items that are happening. It's easy to pick away at it or seemingly pick away at it after the fact, but my ask for a review and it be brought back through the public in some capacity, whether through committee or through a presentation at council. I think the public would desire to understand it better. Part of it, actually, if you will, has to do with not only our lack of a declaration of local state of emergency, but many people felt there was no response, very little information coming from the province, the different authorities around a declaring of an impending storm of that nature. I know there were people who have reached out to me, and I try to help them understand. We have the ability to push out messaging, but we don't do that onto ourselves anymore. When it comes to weather events, that's a provincial jurisdiction item. I noticed lately, if you haven't already yourself, there are many messages coming out now about weather events across our province well in advance since that event. And so all of this to kind of bring it back and say, hey, what occurred and what are we learning from it? And again, things like why we didn't declare. And it's not because Councillor Dumanowski's asking, because many people in the public were asking. So as a spokesperson for them, I'm bringing that here. The other one was our ability to apply to Alberta Disaster Services for funding for compensation on behalf of the citizens for the events that, again, we understand and we were told will be in the millions. Our liaise with our major industrial group, our residents around response, redundancies, things of that nature. So I would like to informally, I'm not making a formal declaration, but I am asking that be brought back, and I guess after a period of time, if it's not, I'll ask for it again. But so these are the things that the public are asking, and certainly I did extend to them that I would bring forward today, but I will loop back and end with our thanks to all of our staff. I don't do a lot of thank you stuff because everyone's doing their job and they're doing it well, but I do want to say that our staff and our community partners and our neighboring communities and partners, again, with Fortis and Nix and others, rallied together, and it could have been certainly a lot worse situation, and many people did experience it a lot worse than the people within our jurisdiction. But I'm glad in the end, lives were saved, and there's lots of property damage and livestock and other things that were certainly affected, and I'm not even equipped to speak to that emotional toll, never mind financial toll, but I'm thankful and look forward to at some future point a report coming back to council.
Excellent points, Councillor Dumanowski. Just to clarify, you aren't seeking a response right now. You're more seeking for the items you addressed to be included in the post-incident response. Thank you. City Manager Feltham?
First of all, I am extraordinarily proud of what people did right across the organization and the support that we received, including from council. When you're working through these events, it really is a time for everyone to show what they're capable of. And I was extraordinarily pleased with how absolutely everyone stepped forward. I do believe that full debriefing is absolutely necessary. That is a core part of how we do continuous improvement and how we continue to learn. We would be very, very happy to bring a summary back to council and to discuss further what our learnings were from this event.
Thank you. I'm just going to suggest, and I'll leave it to Councillor Van Dyke, but perhaps this could be added to the outstanding items list of the Energy and Infrastructure Committee. Councillor Sharps, or sorry, Managing Director Mastel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple comments. So the Emergency Management Group was mobilized internally, and they do report to the Emergency Advisory Committee, which was a new standing committee formed by council that's scheduled every January to look at past activations as well as planning for future events, and can be called ad hoc at the pleasure of the chair for things of this nature. So to look at an after action report, which will be conducted in Folsom, just like every activation of the Emergency Operations Center. The eligibility for the disaster recovery program is not predicated on the declaration of a state of local emergency. So that application is underway with the province. The state of local emergency is generally enacted when you are looking for the provisions within the Municipal Government Act that are provided through that declaration. So to access resources, goods, procure things outside of typical procurement or trade agreements, things of that nature. And so we monitor what is the response requirements and would they be enhanced by the declaration of a state of local emergency. And we did not see that need, and therefore the recommendation was not brought forward to council for a state of local emergency. But I just wanted to assure council that the application for the disaster recovery program is well underway and is not impeded by that aspect. The full debrief and the after action report will be brought forward to the Emergency Advisory Committee for awareness, and certainly I'll work with you, Your Worship, on establishing a meeting for that review.
Thank you very much. That's a good correction. Councillor Sharps.
Yeah, just really two quick questions. I think Councillor Dumanowski actually made a comment, might have answered my question. So going back to the server real quick, so we knew it was end of life August of 2022. Was that an oversight that we didn't budget or didn't plan for a server upgrade before that? Is that what I heard him say? Or was, I guess I'm wondering if it was due to be no support from Dell after 2022 August. Is there a reason we would wait till 2024 to replace that part? And then I had a second question.
Okay, I'm going to refer that one to the chair, Councillor of the Energy and Infrastructure Committee. And of course, you can refer to whoever else you like. Councillor Van Dyke.
Thank you. Yeah, so a couple of things. So it was not on the current asset management plan. It was an oversight. It was budgeted for 2024, and it is brought back now to 2022 and will not be in the 2024 budget, to answer Councillor Robbins. And it will now be on the asset management plan, but it was having issues in addition to Dell ending their service on that software as well. And if I could also answer Councillor Knodl's question about providers, that system was designed specifically for the hardware that is used in that system as well. They go together, the software and the hardware. So that's why we wouldn't look at other software providers. We would stay with that one because it's designed for that system.
Go ahead.
And just to finish, going back to the tornado, so about, I was going to say 12 hours into the event, I had a couple of emails from some of the industry partners, actually most of the industry partners, everything from IT to operations, and I forwarded those emails directly to Managing Director Maines. And even though it was absolute chaos and just craziness, he still took the time to reply to me and give me an update on, because he saw the emails below and what partner had emailed me. So, you know, I just want to say a big thank you to that, because I'm like the least probable person he wants to talk to during an event like that. But he still took the time, and I passed that on to the partners up in the industrial. And some of it were IT people, like, we're working 24/7. Do you guys have any idea? And so, you know, really took the time. And I'm sure there was other things that he wanted to do than that. So if you could pass that on to him, Acting Director Mohan, that would be awesome.
Councillor Van Dyke.
Thank you. So I know, as Councillor Dumanowski said, there has been many accolades heaped on people doing their jobs, but I wanted to publicly acknowledge the City Operations Division and especially Electrical Distribution for the work that they did after the storm. They worked pretty tirelessly along with community partners to get people their power back, and in record time, in my opinion. And so I just wanted to make sure that the public is aware that we're very grateful and appreciative for the hard work of city staff. So thank you, everyone. And I would also like to say Parks and Rec for the cleanup in the parks, Echodale especially, and road crews cleaning up the streets that had downed branches and other issues with them too. So I know it was a citywide effort to recover from that storm, so thank you.
And of course, the recovery continues, so we will, as Managing Director Mastel said, be applying for the disaster recovery plan. Councillor Hyder.
I guess I'm going to echo Councillor Van Dyke. The work that went into the city and the community after the tornado on July 18th was insane. And I just would like to say everyone went home safe. I have a dear family member who works for electrical distribution, and things like that happen, and I just needed to make sure everyone's home safe, and they were. So kudos to everyone. Thank you.
All right. Oh, Councillor Knodel.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I know it takes me forever to like press the button and like say thank you, but I just know I'm here now. So I also wanted to say thank you to neighboring communities and jurisdictions for the work that was done there as well, even to have a connection from the Lethbridge mayor to you. So just we are a regional neighborhood, right? So anyone that was affected outside of Medicine Hat too, I think is worthy of drawing attention to. So that is it.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions, we'll vote on the motion. And that's unanimous. So we will move on to item 8.5, the Public Services Committee meeting of July 25th, 2022, and there are 3 items for information and 1 item for adoption.
I'll move those.
I'll second.
All right, any questions or comments? Councillor Knodel?
So through the chair, I just wanted to draw attention to the list of pandemic impacts and support recommendations for recognizing the work that went into all sorts of different areas of our lives, and that there's a really great list that's modern and has some nice touch points, murals, and technology related recognition projects. So I just wanted to say thank you to the team that worked on creating those suggestions. I'm excited to see some of those in action.
Councillor Sharps?
Yeah, I just had a request on if I could get an item going back to committee regarding the Monarch Theater while we're in negotiations, is there any consideration to opening the theater while we're negotiating and having like Friends of the Monarch or a volunteer group getting that place open? And it's, you know, I know that there's some negotiations, but it doesn't mean the doors have to be closed, I don't think.
So what I would suggest is, could a request, is that on the current open items list? Are you able to provide an update at this time or perhaps at the next meeting?
What we're talking was what to ultimately do with the Monarch. That's our discussion, not whether it could be open in the interim, but it's certainly something that we can discuss at committee, I think, or at least see what options are available. But,
okay.
But it's in Q3 for ultimate big decision, not interim decisions. So if the question is something in the interim, we could discuss that at the next.
Yeah, so I'm asking for an interim, because I'm aware it's on the outstanding item, but while we're deciding that, in case that keeps going, maybe we could get it open. I mean, we're working on downtown vibrancy, so open buildings are always better than closed.
So is that sufficient clarity? Just looking for some opportunities to reopen the Monarch pending final negotiations with a proponent for the next public services meeting.
Your worship, absolutely, we could look at options. I can tell you we did explore what might be available for an interim plan. All of the options that we see involve some level of financial commitment from the city. So if city council is aware of that up front, the volunteer groups that were referenced do not have the capacity to take this on solely. They can help supplement, but certainly have indicated that that is not within their capability to take the lead and run the entire theater. So all our options left us with some level of city involvement and probably pretty significant. So that's why we had chose to go the path that we did and look for an external operator to take on complete operations of the facility. So with that context, if you would like us to revisit some of those options and bring them back, we certainly can do that, but just be prepared that they're going to have residual costs to the city to advance them.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, we will vote on the motion. And that's unanimous. Next is reports. Item 9, reports for reception. Item 9.1, Municipal Planning Commission of July 13th, 2022 for information.
I'll move that.
A second.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, we will vote on the motion. And that's unanimous. Item 9.2, Municipal Planning Commission of July 27th, 2022. This item is for information, but there would be a non-statutory public hearing for direct control item on August 15th, 2022.
Second. Go ahead.
So that was moved by Councillor McGrogan and seconded by Councillor Hyder. Councillor Van Dyke?
Sorry, I'm trying to find the place in the agenda. Is this with the development on the hill? With the slope? Oh, so is that's not this one, or yes? Sorry. There's a lot of agenda to get through.
Yeah, Councillor McGrogan, do you have some comments on that?
I think, Judge, at the second meeting, we did deal with that, but in the next council meeting, there's a public hearing and an opportunity to speak for or against or have a viewpoint.
So now is not the time to ask questions about this?
You most certainly can ask questions, yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess I was just a little concerned about development along the edges of the coulees. I mean, this is just community hearsay, but it was my understanding that there was a moratorium on new development or replacement development along the edges of the coulees, and I'm wondering if someone could clarify that for me.
Okay, I'm going to go to Acting City Clerk Robinson because she has something to say, and it's probably really important.
If we're starting to express concerns about what's happening there because there's a non-statutory public hearing, my recommendation would be to wait until that hearing to ask those questions.
Fair point.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no questions, we will vote on the motion. And that's unanimous. Moving on to new bylaws, item 10.1 through 10.3 are all for first reading. And generally, there's no debate with first reading and will be subject to public hearings and second and third reading on September 6th. So item 10.1, bylaw number 4703, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to adopt the Coulee Ridge Outline Plan.
I'll move that.
Second.
So that's moved for first reading. Councillor Knodel?
To clarify, the opportunity to ask questions and discuss will come later.
Yes, at second and third reading. Generally speaking, clarifying questions are appropriate, but first reading really just gets the bylaw on the table so that at second and third reading, we can discuss it further. All right, we will. All right, we'll vote on first reading. And that's unanimous. Item 10.2 is bylaw number 4704, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend bylaw number 4168, the City of Medicine Hat Land Use Bylaw, rezoning of lands located within the Coulee Ridge Outline Plan. Can I have a motion for first reading?
I'll move for leave for that.
Second.
Seeing no questions, we will vote. And that's unanimous. Moving on to item 10.3, bylaw number 4707, a bylaw of the City of Medicine Hat to amend bylaw number 4168, the City of Medicine Hat Land Use Bylaw, re-text amendments. Can I have a motion for first reading?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Seeing no questions, we will vote. And that's unanimous. Moving on to new business. Item 12.1, collective bargaining between the City of Medicine Hat and the Firefighters Association.
Your Worship, pleased to read the motion before you. Pursuant to Section 20 D and E of the Administrative Organization Bylaw, which is Bylaw 4662, it is recommended that the City Council ratifies the Mediators' recommendations for terms of settlement, which provide the following. 1, changes to the fire service promotional policy for the 3 senior officer positions in the bargaining unit, which are the platoon chief, fire marshal, and chief training officer. 2, a change to the service pay premium to provide employees with 1% of regular pay after 15 years of service, 1.5% of regular pay after 20 years of service, and 2% of regular pay after 25 years of service. And 3, a general wage increase of 1.5% effective January 1st, 2019, 1.5% effective January 1st, 2020, 2.5% effective January 1st, 2021, and 2.5% effective January 1st, 2022.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote. And that's unanimous. Moving on to item 12.2, Vicious Dog Appeal Committee.
Through the chair, I move that the following persons be appointed as an appeal committee with respect to the vicious dog designations under the Responsible Animal Ownership Bylaw for the balance of this council term. Councillor Sharps, Councillor Knodel, and Managing Director Mastel.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we will vote. And that's unanimous. And with leave of the chair, we have one further item from Councillor Knodel.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I have seen crime prevention through environmental design come up in our agenda a couple times now. And I just wondered, and this is kind of open to any staff, the idea behind crime prevention through environmental design is to displace crime from one area, ideally the area where a perpetrator or the victim can see and be seen, to prevent or to encourage people from being alone in a situation, or to deter someone from doing crime. That's not good language, but my main concern is the displacement of the crime itself doesn't stop the crime. It just moves it to a different location. So I just wonder if we have considered the internal conditions of the perpetrator in the way that we think about this, rather than just changing the environment to displace the crime as a form of prevention. I don't know if it's necessarily, a solution. So I'm just wondering if I could put that out there. I know that it's more of a police philosophy concerned, but I thought that maybe that could be taken away and the question could be asked where it's appropriate. Sure.
Councillor McGrogan, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, just briefly, I don't think, just from my familiarity with crime prevention through environmental design, it's not meant to displace people. It's meant to design neighborhoods to make it more inaccessible to criminal activity. And I think of a large tree in front of a window that's susceptible to a break and enter, not having it there. So I don't remember in any of my past dealings with SEPTED, as we called it, that there was any desire through that program to displace criminality. It was just to make the environment safer for everybody that's in it.
So for example, I'll just give you an example of what inspired me to bring this up. For example, a bench would, rather than being built flat, will have handles so that a person can't sit in that or lay on that bench, sleep on that bench. So for example, that would cause the person without a home to sleep on the ground, therefore causing health concerns, et cetera. So that kind of ripple effect. So that's why I was concerned about it, is there are certain examples that may just displace rather than deter. But maybe you're not. I mean, maybe there's more to it.
Yeah, I can't answer to that specifically. It is a diminishing skill set.
All right, would you like to make a motion to refer it to a committee?
I think, would you have a suggestion as to who it would be best suited to? Perhaps Public Services, I suppose, or Municipal Planning Commission, but Police Commission, but can we refer to Police Commission? No.
No, we cannot.
Yeah.
Perhaps City Manager Feltham, you could have someone get in touch with Councillor Knodel directly and try and refine where this is best suited.
We will do so.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further business, the next City Council meeting is August 15th, 2022. Can I have a motion to go back into closed? Councillor Sharps and Councillor Knodel. This open session is adjourned.